private notice question, protection of Parliament from espionage. Lord True.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask a question of which I have given private notice. The question is as follows: to ask His Majesty's Government what assessment they have made of their ability to protect Parliament from Chinese espionage in the light of the collapse of recent legal proceedings.
My Lords, the UK Government remains steadfast in its commitment to reducing the threat from foreign espionage targeting UK domestic institutions and continues to drive cross-government work to respond to the threat through the Defending Democracy Task Force. The National Cybersecurity Centre and the Centre for the Protection on Critical National Infrastructure produce advice and guidance for members of both Houses of Parliament. MI5's National Protective Security Authority has today, 22 minutes ago, launched new guidance to protect the UK's democratic institutions from foreign interference.
My Lords, I welcome, I'll look at the action that she's recommended, has mentioned. I'm sorry the Leader of the House is not in her place to answer this question. Will the noble Baroness agree that no step must be left unturned to safeguard the integrity of our Parliament from espionage by foreign state actors, and notably the malign and relentless activity of China? My Lords, any suggestion of executive action or inaction that may have led to the collapse of these proceedings must be investigated thoroughly and unequivocally condemned. So will the noble Baroness give the House a categorical assurance that if any evidence occurs of Chinese targeting of members of your Lordship's House, past, present or future, she will press colleagues in government at the highest level to ensure that those involved will be brought to court and made to answer for their actions? No ifs, no buts, and certainly no secret quid pro quos.
I thank the noble Lord for his question. He's absolutely right. Of course, we would expect full prosecution for anybody that undertakes espionage against members of your Lordship's House, but also of anyone working in Parliament. My Lords, I want to make it very clear that we are very disappointed at the CPS's decision. This was made by them as an independent body, and noble Lords will be aware that a statement is being made by the Security Officer, by the Security Minister this afternoon, which we will have the opportunity to discuss later in this week about the actions that this government is taking.
The former Director General of the Security Service has warned the country that Chinese espionage has been carried out on an industrial scale, including seeking influence over Parliament, but also on industry and education. It's why I and these benches warned that exempting China from the enhanced tier of the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme under the National Security Act was a strategic mistake by the government. Not only that, but the government, and with the Conservative Party's support, exempting government administration and public bodies in their entirety from the first scheme was a strategic error. I wanted that on the 5th of June. Will the Minister not agree with me that new guidance is fine, but it's hamstrung if the government and the official opposition continue their support for the exemption of the first scheme of the very areas where we know China are seeking to influence?
The noble Lord has consistently made these arguments. I just want to confirm, as has been said previously in your Lordship's House, that no decision has yet been made in relation to specifying China on the enhanced tier of the scheme. As noble Lords would expect, my officials continue to consider whether and how the enhanced tier can be used to provide greater protection for areas where China and other countries pose significant threats. Adding countries to the enhanced tier requires the consideration of a broad range of interests, and any decisions will be brought before Parliament in the usual way.
No doubt the government's statement that the decision not to proceed with the prosecution was entirely that of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Will she acknowledge that in the light of the Director's subsequent statement, that was economical with the truth?
While I have huge respect for the noble Lord, I absolutely do not. This was an independent decision made by the CPS. There was no ministerial involvement, there was no special advisor involvement. This was, and the Deputy National Security Advisor, without interference, gave 3 different witness statements to the CPS for their use. My Lords, this is not a matter of of us not assisting the case. This is an independent matter for the CPS.
Lord, would the Minister agree that all embassies have spies in them, but the larger the embassy, the more spies can fit in? Is it appropriate to have an embassy the size of the one that's being proposed for China?
I never thought I'd be discussing real estate and espionage, but my lords, we find ourselves in a strange set of circumstances. I thank my noble friend, but let me be clear, as he is very well aware, the decision about the future location of the Chinese embassy is a matter for the Secretary of State for the Department for Local Government, Ministry of Housing and Local Government, and a decision will be brought forward in due course.
Does the government accept that China is a security threat to our country or not?
The noble lord is famous for asking such straightforward and easy questions. The government is clear that we have that our relationship with China is complex. We are to compete, to challenge and cooperate. Choosing not to engage with China is no choice at all. But let's be clear, the Chinese government has operated in such a way, state agents have acted in such a way that is a potential threat to the United Kingdom. We continue to have conversations and engage in a collaborative way with our Five Eyes partners to counter that challenge, and will continue to do so.
The noble ladies. Could the Minister confirm that spying by the Chinese is not a new phenomenon and has been conducted under previous governments as well?
The Right Reverend Prelate makes a very important point, and including with relation to this case was conducted, was allegedly occurred under the last government. The role of China and other nations seeking to get information and access to members of your Lordship's House is nothing new.
The noble lady said in answer to my noble friend Lord Butler that the decision not to continue the prosecution was entirely a matter for the DPP, with no involvement whatsoever from any advisor or special advisor. Surely it is the role of the National Security Advisor to advise in relation to such a matter, and for that to be taken strongly into account by the DPP.
As I have previously said, the Deputy National Security Advisor gave, on behalf of the government, gave 3 different witness statements as requested by CPS and the DPP. We gave full, and would continue to, for all prosecutions, evidence as available. It was a matter for the DPP to determine whether there was enough evidence to proceed, and in this matter they chose not to.
Does my noble friend recall that we once had a Chancellor of the Exchequer called George Osborne, and amongst the many things he said, and this was 10 years ago in the dying days of the Osborne-Cameron government, that it was we should stick together with China and make it a golden decade for both our countries, and the aim was to make China the second largest trading partner for Britain. All parties are entitled to change their policies, but does my noble friend have any information as to when the Conservative Party made this 180-degree shift?
I very much thank my noble friend for his question. Let me be clear about some of the interesting comments in terms of where the opposition have been. That when Foreign Secretary, the Right Honourable James Cleverly, MP, who I have a huge amount of time for, called the decision to sum up China in one word as a threat, quote, impossible, impractical and most importantly, unwise. I think most interesting for your Lordship's House is the Leader of the Opposition, when Business Secretary, said, and I quote, "We should not be describing China as a foe." My Lords, when in government, the opposition had some interesting views on China, so did some of their ministers. On that basis, I think that we need to be very clear about what we're talking about.
I'm very grateful to the noble lady, the Minister, for her answers. Is it the case that the witness statements of the Deputy National Security Advisor will be published? Is it the case that any communications between the National Security Advisor and the Deputy National Security Advisor relating to this case will be published? Is it the case that the National Security Advisor and the Deputy National Security Advisor will make themselves available to a committee of this House or to a joint committee in order to explain their decisions? And is it the case that the Attorney-General, who has ministerial responsibility for the Crown Prosecution Service, will share information with this House about how that decision was reached? And if not, why not?
The noble Lord invites, first of all, I'll say series of questions at question time that typically is just one, but the noble Lord invites a series of questions which I suggest that we discuss when we have the statement repeat in the other end, because obviously my honourable friend from the other place, the Security Minister, will be on his feet about this very issue within the next 2 hours.
If China is considered to be a security threat, will the government end ownership of the UK infrastructure by entities connected with the Chinese government? That kind of infiltration formed part of the previous government privatisation policies.
The noble Lord raises an interesting point which has been discussed, my noble friend rather, which has been discussed many times in your Lordship's House about the role of Chinese investment in our country. The reality is that we both consider there is an element of security threat, but they are also have the potential to compete, challenge and cooperate with China. My Lords, this is the second largest economy and our third largest trading partner. We have to have a level of engagement.
The noble lady, the Minister, agree that to the average layperson, such as myself, it seems strange that the government can, or the prosecution services, can bring serious charges against two people, and for 18 months these charges remain and the court is convened to prosecute these charges, and then at the 11th hour it is said they haven't sufficient evidence. To the layperson that seems extremely strange.
Yeah.
The noble Lord makes a very important point. Obviously the 18-month delay is unfortunate, which is why we're trying to fix the court services going forward. With regards to the case made by Noble Lord, actually there was the Rousseff case. There was a piece of case law about the Official Secrets Act, which concerned the DPP, which is why additional information was taken and which is why he has made, or the CPS has made their decision, from my understanding.
Can I remind the Minister of the old Foreign Office dictum that we have no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent interests? It is our permanent interest not to fall out disastrously with the biggest country in the world. We have to live with them, we have to talk to them, and both sides have to realise that there are things that cannot be done. But for goodness sake, let's stop talking about enemies and start talking about cooperation.
I hope the noble Lord has appreciated that I have said cooperate twice in the last 13 minutes. The noble Lord is right. I would, however, say that the first duty of government is our safety and security, and to provide that. So there is a balance here between making sure that the population in the United Kingdom is safe and secure, that your lordships are available to go about their work unconcerned about the threat of espionage, while at the same time appreciating the international reality in a very uncertain world, that we need to make sure that we're engaging with who is our third biggest trading partner.
Minister, have another go to answer my question. Does the government regard China as a threat to our national security or not?
Just for the noble Lord, I will read from my pack. The government knows that China poses a series of threats to UK national security. We have seen Chinese espionage and cyber attacks on our soil and transnational repression of Hong Kongers. I think based on that, my lords, I can say yes.
Has His Majesty's Government had any discussions with the Crown Prosecution Service about the wording of the Official Secrets Act in light of the collapse of this case? And is it the Government's understanding that the wording of the Acts was a factor in the collapse of that case?
The noble Lord raises a very important point, and one which I hope is going to be discussed this afternoon in the other place, that we can then have a conversation about later on this week.
When you see the background of the build-up of what China is building to create war. The number of ships they're building, and in every conceivable way of drones, without doubt. And I totally support the view that China is probably the most dangerous enemy that we have to deal with for the future.
I wouldn't necessarily use the word enemy, my lords, as we have discussed and in response to earlier questions. It is clear that there are areas where we both need to compete and challenge as well as cooperate with China, and we will continue to do so.
Before we move into committee, perhaps any noble lords wishing to leave the chamber would like to do so now.